Welcome back to the Magnetic Soul Podcast. Today's episode, I have an interview with my friend Will Caminada, who's also known as the Pleiadian Channel. And before we get into the episode and who Will is, I just wanted to share a couple of announcements of some upcoming events happening in April. These are likely going to be my last events before baby comes in May. I can't believe I'm already at this place in my pregnancy, but and then after he comes, I'll likely be stepping into doing a lot more of these group events, and I have something that I'm creating behind the scenes for you all. So I'm excited about that. It's just kind of the reality of what I'm stepping into and where I'm at in motherhood. And I love the idea of bringing people together in the group energy. I feel like it's so needed right now to connect with soul family, like-minded souls. So I'm excited to be bringing this forward. But the first event will be on April 4th. I wanted to share that this is going to be a smaller, intimate group setting. I did this back in August and it was such a great event. It's a group reading and activation. So we'll do a little 4/4 portal activation, meditation, and each person will receive their own mini reading, their own channeled message so you'll each have your own one-on-one time. And so this is going to be a smaller group, so space will be limited. So I recommend, if you're interested, just check the show notes and you can book your spot. So it's funny, I wasn't intending to have it on the 4/4 portal. I had originally planned it on one day, but it was funny because it was like my mind was saying one thing, but my soul was saying another. And I guess I kept creating events and the materials for it all. I kept writing the 4th. So I said, all right, we're just going to do it on the 4th. And it's really interesting. I'm really tapping into a lot of angel messages, earth angels. So I really feel like there's that kind of vibe that's going to be coming together for that group. And then my next event is going to be on April 16th at, 2 p.m. The first event, April 4th at 11 a.m. PST. And then my April 16th, I will be having it at 2 p.m. PST. And this event is an open group event, so there's lots of space, lots of room. I'm getting really excited about that event too. I will be doing a group channeling, so channeling message for the group, and a group activation. It feels like it's like an Akashic activation. I'm so excited for this. It's really about clearing old energy and stepping into a brand new cycle and your future self energy. So I feel like there's a lot of themes. I feel like a lot of us are ready to step into that new cycle. And it's really bringing in the energy of birth. And I know I'm obviously going to physically be giving birth to a baby a few weeks later, but there's so much birth energy and fresh energy I feel for April. So I'm excited for this event. It's going to be so powerful and so fun to bring you all together. And I'll have time after for a little Q&A. So if you are interested, everything will be in the show notes that you can book your spot. And I'm excited. So let's get into this episode. So Will Caminada is a multidimensional guide, a Pleiadian channel, a breathwork and meditation facilitator, a singer-songwriter, and the author of From Darkness to Light, a continuous journey towards your essence. I love that. Will's main mission is to support fellow starseeds and lightworkers throughout the current process of ascension into the 5D New Earth. Will works with the Pleiadians, a group of star beings currently assisting humanity through this journey. He channels his higher self, who is a Pleiadian being in Taygeta, and also a collective consciousness who present themselves as the 9D Collective Pleiadians. They aim to bring down to earth messages, funnily enough, for humans who are consciously walking through the path of ascension and expanding into their inherent multidimensionality. I love all of that. So the Pleiadian energy is something that I've connected with. I channel the Pleiadians as well. They're definitely a huge presence for me. And I feel like Will, it's really interesting with Will. He and I met, obviously, as we do, and I share how we met. Is obviously through Instagram, but it was really interesting. I shared this in the episode about how, he and I had dreams about each other. We were in each other's dreams. He, before I even met him and knew who he was. And so we share this, we share about like the dreams that we're having. And he's one of those people that is just so, like, you just know he's such a good person. Like, he has such a huge heart and is just such a good energy. And I loved this conversation. I always love talking to Will. I was actually on his podcast the week before we recorded the interview for this podcast. So we've kind of done a little bit of an exchange, and just always so fun to sit with him. And it really feels like, so I feel like there's a lot of these, I want to talk a little bit about soul connections, because Will was one of those people where it was like I was excited to connect with him and chat with him, because it's like our souls knew each other. It's like we already knew each other, and it's easy. Like it was an easy conversation. Whenever we talk, it's very easy. It's flowing, and there's like a lot of resonance, and it feels like I already know him because our souls know each other. And I share this with you all because there is this like soul level connections that are coming in, and you may have already felt this with like soulmate energies. And I'm not talking about romantic, I'm talking about like those soul connections, the soul family, that type of energy, people that we know from other realms, right? We know from maybe past lives, or the galactic realms, or the angelic realms. These are all coming in. There's a lot of new soul connections coming in. And you know the difference between when you just vibe with someone, like that you just vibe with their soul, you know their soul, it's an easy connection, you know, you can kind of drop the walls, and it's kind of effortless in that way. And it's interesting because a lot of these soul connections have been starting to come into my life in such a big way. And even in client sessions, there's times where before I even get on a call, I'm like, oh, I know this person, and it's been happening a lot, and it's super fun. So I wanted to share that with you all, because there is a different energy when you just feel like your souls know each other, and your souls have done this before in many other lifetimes. And a lot of reunions are happening amongst souls and friends and people from all different places of the world coming together, right? So I wanted to share that with you all, because it does feel like a really big theme, and you will know the difference when between what is more of like a karmic relationship and what is like a soul level knowing, these soul groups coming together, this soul family, right? And so I wanted to share that with you all. I'm going to just get right into the episode, because we cover so much. It is just such a great episode. There's so much depth, so much knowledge, so much information that will really help you on your path of awakening to your gifts, your multidimensionality, being a starseed on Earth. And we also have so much fun in this episode. So I just am really excited for you guys all to hear it. And all of Will's information is available in the show notes, so you can connect with him there. And let's get right into this episode. If you could subscribe, like, download, comment, I always appreciate it all. And I hope you enjoy this episode. Firstly, all morning, the Pleiadians were just coming forward strongly. Their energy is just beaming right now. And I think it's because we're going to be talking today, but it was kind of the same thing as last week when I was going to be on your podcast. It was like this level of excitement, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling all these like codes and excitement. And it's like, oh, because we're like reconnecting. The Pleiadians are very present. I don't know if you feel them right now, but they're very
Yeah.
strong.
First, I felt like, wow, we're doing some work in
Yeah.
the astral realm. But also, I have a strong feeling that you and your daughter are very much Pleiadians. Like you have a strong connection with them. And
Mhm.
obviously, we can have different connections as well with other beings. But I feel like both of you are Pleiadian star seeds, and I think that's why it's easy for us to meet up there. We
Yeah.
have access in the spiritual, in the higher dimensions. That's what I feel.
I totally feel that too. She feels very like Pleiadian, but Lyran as well. It's interesting. Before we got on this call, they were just talking about all these different star aspects that are merging right now. Like there's just like you think you're one thing, but there's so much more to this experience, and there's so much that is coming forward and integrating right now. Interesting, because I was looking and I saw you like they're like tapping you on the head about something, and I'm trying to figure out what it is, but I don't know if you've like felt that, if there's something like calling you lately, but they're just really tapping it.
Yep.
As I know, I mentioned this to you, but I wanted to share it here that like you before I even started this podcast, I think it was like right before or maybe right around I started this podcast, and I had a dream. It was like a dream, but I was in the astral, like half awake, that in between state. And I was like interviewing or like doing some kind of work with a man, and I was like, woke, I was like, I wonder who that man was because it felt very galactic. And then shortly after, I don't know how it was. I think maybe it was like Blue Rose Lisa, and I think that's where she like posted something about you, or and that's when I was like, oh my God, it's the guy. That's the guy in the dream who I'm like,
Uh,
yeah.
like you said, there's a lot happening in the dreams, and we're like meeting in the dreams, but also like meeting in 3D.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to note because there's so much happening in dream time too. And there's also a lot closing out. Like, I think a lot of people are closing out a lot of loops with people from the past. So I think that when people are like, why am I having dream of like this person or my ex-boyfriend, or like, because that's happening to a lot of people. And it's because there's so much like karmic connections, I think, closing out in dreams because we're not all often able to have those closures in real time. And I've actually had friends who I'm no longer in connection with apologize to me in dreams. Like their souls are coming to apologize to me. And so there's just so much happening. And I also see future people coming together. Like I think a lot of people are either seeing like soul connections or different soul groups that are like kind of coming in, or even like partners that are about to meet. And so it's really interesting, all these, the multidimensional things that are happening in dreams and all the spiritual work that a lot of us do in dream time, right?
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and it's been happening a lot. I mean, I've always been a dreamer, like an avid dreamer, like a dreamer in the sense that I had dreams, but also the dreams at night.
Yeah. Both.
Um, and messages come through in our dreams. Like if you're a person that dreams a lot, then spirit could be trying to communicate through you for them. So I
Yeah.
see this happening as well.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I actually just had a client. I messaged her about a dream that was like a confirmation for her that I had with her. I mean, it's so multidimensional what happens. You know what? I think your new tagline should be they say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one.
Yeah. That was the song that came through when I said the word dream. So we
Yeah,
are already communicating telepathically. I love
we
that.
totally are. I love it. Yeah, I'm so excited as always to connect with you. I know that like our first time actually fully meeting was last week on your podcast, and I had so much fun, and I was so excited to talk to you, and I didn't know why. And the Pleiadians were like, it's because you're about to meet your star family and your soul friend. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And again, this morning, I like woke up and I think I had a really deep energy working dream last night because I woke up so much more refreshed. And again today, I was like, okay, maybe I just should like sit and prepare. And the Palladians were like, no, no, that's not how this is gonna work. So I obviously have a few directions that I am excited to talk to you about, but I know that this conversation is just gonna be like an intuitive channeling session of its own and take on its own forms because that's how it is, right? We think we're coming for one thing, but or having one conversation.
The Pleiadians are very playful and they want us to play and have fun. So they've helped me a lot because I'm a Capricorn, so I like to have things structured. And they've helped me a lot over the years, like just go with the flow and have fun. So
Yeah, and I think that's why that another thing with the tapping, I was kind of seeing they're like messing around with you, not in a bad way, but like a fun way to like I don't know. It just feels like they are such a playful group. And imagine if we all went into conversations like this where we just showed up. We didn't have to come with these like preconceived ideas of what we should talk about. You know how we go into like a new situation and then we like start to strategize what we should say and all these things. And what if we just like literally just showed up and let what needs to come through in every given situation? Do you know what I mean?
yeah, totally. And I think there's something about the connection as well. It's like when when the two of us are so in sync in terms of frequency and resonance,
Yeah.
it just feels exciting and it just feels like it's going to flow. Like we don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
So I guess it's also about that recognition of the resonance as well.
Oh, absolutely. It is. It's like riding on that same wavelength. Will is the Pleiadian Channel, which we're going to get into. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this may already know of you and your account and everything. And it's funny because I haven't been consuming content lately, especially after Sedona. But this morning I was like, probably like about an hour before we got on the call, they're like, should see what the Pleiadians said to him today. And so I went on and I loved what they said because it was all about I mean, you obviously know better than I do. I don't know the actual quote of it, but a lot of it was talking about um something that they were talking about with me earlier this morning was this merging of the spiritual with the physical, with the human, and how important it is for us to have recognize that we are still having a human experience and and enjoy all these like human things that we love to enjoy and not lose ourselves in the spiritual or ungroundedness that can happen.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
I just remembered because I couldn't remember what the message was.
I
No,
never remember.
like yes, last night. But yes, yes, now that you said it, yeah. It's such an important message, I think, for star seeds and alike, because sometimes people say to me, like, I don't know if I'm a star seed or what is a star seed. Usually if they're thinking about it or asking that question, they probably are, and they're just like in the process of remembering it.
Mhm.
But I think, and I see this very often with clients and my community members and myself included, that sometimes we just feel like this is so much and this is so challenging and overwhelming to be in this density, to be in this body, because we're in the shift. Like we're not in the 5D planet yet. And so the shift can be uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
we're oscillating between 3D, 4D, 5D all the time, right? But it's so important for us to remind ourselves, and the Pleiadians do that often because I think that's something we need to enjoy this experience, to enjoy it's a short experience from, from the higher dimensional perspective is it goes like this. And it's also beautiful. Like there are so many things that we can get to experience and explore here. It's funny because the Pleiadians always talk about ice cream for some funny reason, and I actually love ice cream.
I love ice cream. My daughter loves ice cream too. So maybe it's a Palladian thing. We'll just say it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I love acai as well. I'm Brazilian, so like I love acai. I can have it every day.
I love it. It's my favorite. What talk about a good third eye opening food, hey?
Yeah, we will. Yeah, they always remind us that yeah, we should enjoy these little things, and it is about that and about enjoying the things that we can enjoy that when we move through to the other realm, to the spiritual realm, we're not going to be able to do these things, like
Mhm.
tasting and smelling and touching and hugging
Yeah.
and
The emotions of it all too.
emotions. Yes.
I went through like something really challenging last year, and they kept saying to me because I had such a high level of angels and go, I don't know, it was a very high level energy that was connecting with me while I was going through it all. And they're like, we're so sorry. We didn't, if we would, because it was almost like they were able to feel my energy or have a human experience while I was kind of going through this. And they're like, if we were to have been able to feel how it actually felt like for a human, like we would have never have wanted to do this essentially. And so it is true. Like we have this wide variety of experiences and emotions on Earth. And at the same time, I know because I know for myself for a really long time, I wanted to eject. I wanted to go back up. And I didn't even know what I was saying, but I would be like 6, 7, 8 years old, being like, okay, I got dropped in the wrong place. Like, where's the button? Like, take me back. And I think so many starseeds have that experience and continue to reaffirm that experience. But Earth is actually like a really cool place. And there's so much here for us to explore. And I think that we need to stop trying to leave all the time and really try to like enjoy this experience although it feels like a long time, it is really a short time. And, enjoy the humanness of it all. And I think with like spirituality and all of that, I think a lot of people they feel like they have to like lose themselves or change the way they speak or dress the part. And I think that it's just not the way it is. And we're meant to become more of who we really are in this human body and less of like these layers and veils that we put on ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. And something that the Pleiadians always say too, and have recently said in channeled messages, is about power. And they want us to know that we are powerful because we are humans. And
Mhm.
so we can do a lot by being incarnate here on Earth and help Earth to ascend because we are in the human vessel. And the humanness in us is part of our multidimensionality. And we tend to see the spiritual realm or the Pleiadians or the Arcturians or the angels like they're in a higher level and they're in a better place,
Mhm.
but they don't see us like that. They see it from a neutral perspective. It's just that your soul has chosen to be here and to help Earth to ascend in this time, and we're equal. Like we can be even more powerful if we accept our humanness and understand that we have the connection with them too. And so that makes us even more powerful. And it's about sovereignty and that inner divine power. I'm not talking about power over others, which is,
Yeah.
power has been misunderstood for thousands of years. I mean, but that inner power, once we really embrace our humanness and understand that we are powerful beings because we are here, and there's so much that we can do because we are here, then the journey gets maybe easier or lighter.
Yes, I love that so much. I think there's so much to be said about this reclamation of power and not the power over. And also, um, when it comes with those, people who are very connected to the spiritual realm, their spirit guides and all of that, it's also coming back into that place of sovereignty within that we still get to choose, that we are also powerful. We are ancient, multidimensional souls that do have the answers within us. And so I think a lot of times that, we're connecting with higher consciousness, we're connecting with guides of ours, but sometimes we're connecting with different soul fractals of ourselves and how powerful we really are. And sometimes I do feel like if the guides are quieter, or you're not really getting the answer, or you're not really having that connection for a period of time, I think some people freak out a little bit. But it's really because they want us to come up with a decision. They want us to remember just how powerful and wise that we are and to not constantly put it above, right? And there really is no hierarchy in the upper realms. I think that's something that we very much label. And I don't know about you, but I feel like even getting away from like the dimensional planes of where everybody's from, do you think we get caught up in that a little bit in the channeling? Like, what dimension are you? Where are you from? And less about like what the message is and the frequency that's coming through a bit.
Yes, yes. I think that's just the nature of the mind
Mhm.
because we see things in a very linear way. And that's okay. Like we can't really escape much. This is actually how we understand things. But then I think we can use the linearity of our minds to understand things, but also remind ourselves that it's not as linear as it seems. So even with the dimensions, we think all the higher dimensions, the lower dimensions, it's just higher or lower from our perspective. And the higher dimensional beings, yes, there is, if we're looking at from a linear perspective, there is a hierarchy. The angels are closer to source, but if you step out of that linear mind, is we're all connected, we're all one. And so if they're close to source and I am also a particle of source itself, then we're equal, right? And just touching on the power thing and this idea of like wanting to connect and get the answers or the messages, this is something that came up recently in the activation, the starseed relationship activation I did with the group. And I think it was related to relationship, but we can apply it to anything. It's because we tend to get some of us we get into the habit of thinking the universe knows best,
Mhm.
like source knows best. And if it's meant to be, it's going to be. Like I'll just surrender and I'll go with the flow. And there's an aspect of that that I think it's va very valid and important. But then there's like a little PS there, which is if you are a particle of source, if you are the universe manifested into this physical being, human being, multidimensional being, then when you say, well, the universe knows best, then you know best. Then you should
Yes.
know best. And so trust your own choices.
Mhm.
Obviously, because of conditioning and programming, we've been so conditioned to live with the ego in the lead. And that's why we start like not to trust, because then we awaken and we kind of make the egos the bad guy. And then we're
Mhm.
like, I don't trust the ego anymore. So I trust the universe. But now we're like, okay, can we put everything together, the ego and the spirit and your body, your human self and the universe, and just trust that you know what's best for you?
I love that so much because I think also on another perspective, firstly, on this topic, it's like I feel like a lot of people are beginning to become almost like these walking channels where it's less of external thing that's up here and more about integrating these multidimensional aspects in our everyday lives and situations. And also on the other side of this, I think when a lot of people are beginning the journey or like kind of needing that proof of connection, there is this reliance on signs. And there's this reliance on something externally. And I love signs, I love numbers and all of that. However, there comes a point in the evolution where they want people to stop relying on them because I think that a lot of people come to me and they're like, well, I didn't get the sign. It's like, you're literally getting pushed to do this. Don't like, and you're waiting for a sign. Like you have it all here. You know what to do. You don't need a sign. You just need to take action. And I think that that's where this is like we have to stop placing that power or waiting for the right situations to come into play before you take that action or before you do that thing. It's like we have to start to explore and have some fun and like get our hands messy again. Like stop with this perfection, and I'm sure this probably relates to like relationships as well. I think a lot of people who have been hurt or within family relationships, within romantic relationships, within friendships, I think a lot of people have gone through a lot of karmic situations and all that. But I really do feel like we're at a place where it's time for these soul connections to come forward. It's time for soul communities to come forward. The people that you're meant to collaborate and be in community with and in connection with in some kind of way to come together. And with that, we have to drop these walls and let ourselves be open and vulnerable with our walls down because there's so many walls around the heart that are preventing from that connection because of past situations. And so I'm sure it's the same thing with like what you're saying with like the universe and these perfect orchestrations and situations that like I think from the relationship standpoint, it's like people are so afraid to just, for example, go on that date or reach out to that person because they're like waiting for these circumstances. But it's like, just get in there, just do it, like, just do the thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to rewind a little bit and touch on the sign thing that you mentioned, and we always get the signs too. And
Mhm.
I think that the part of us that's looking for the sign is more the ego,
Yeah.
because it wants the validation, it wants the verification. And the universe, our guides are so generous and they understand that this will be good for us. You know, it will build our trust and our confidence that they send the little
Yeah.
signs. But yeah, if you just when you don't have the signs, I think it's also an invitation for you to start trusting your inner guidance
Mhm.
more and trust your intuition. Yeah, and that applies to relationships as well. And these this this gut feeling, or um, breaking the walls around the heart as well,
Mhm.
and just believing in love again.
Yeah.
But I also think that I just had this like vision of fences around the heart. When you break them and they fall apart, there's this like higher, there's this bigger torus around it, meaning there's a level of resonance that's so much more accurate than before. And I think that's what we're learning in this new era is the language of frequency and just feeling. And so it's the resonance, and you just trust that. And I'm sure everyone listening or watching, they've experienced moments where they just know that that person is going to be their friend,
Yes.
or they enter a room and they just know that they have to leave. They can't really
Yes.
understand why. And so these are the moments that this resonance is very strong, so that they feel it and they take action, right? It's just that because we've been programmed to rationalize things, and the ego is always like in the front lead. We tend to rationalize things, or there's the whole, societal rules of whatever it is in the situation that you're in. But take these moments that you've been through and just connect with this feeling, because this is going to be the norm in the future. It's just this very quick, instant knowing and feeling, which is clair sentience, clair cognizant, which sometimes we don't even um, we kind of disregard them because, and I see this because I teach this, and so a lot of people are like they want to see it or they want to hear it.
Everybody's obsessed with seeing. I'm like, no, you're missing the point. Like, firstly, like I love that you're saying this because I try to say, don't get caught up in the clairs because it is very multidimensional. Sometimes you'll feel it transfers into knowing and all these different things. But it's like people are so obsessed with like having the one sight, and if they don't have that, they think that they don't have it. And it's like, no, there's so many multidimensional ways that you are receiving information, and to let that go because you are receiving it in your own unique way. So I love that we're talking about this.
Yeah. And sometimes you're so focused on wanting to visualize something that you forget that you're feeling something in your body, or that you're feeling an emotion, or that there's a sound that's coming through, because you're so focused on one point. And so I like to teach about the clairs so that people have an awareness of what they are, but I emphasize that you shouldn't be focused on one thing, because they can happen randomly. So it is about just allowing yourself to feel and see what comes through. And I think it was maybe a past channeled message, and it was something along the lines of this, like the clairsentients and claircognizant will actually be the first ones that will help us in this new way of communicating with spirit and amongst ourselves as well, which is just that knowing and the feeling. And it's something that we tend to take for granted and we kind of disregard, right? So sometimes we don't pay attention in the body sensations or even the emotions, or just the knowing, because we're expecting the sign, or we're expecting to see something or to hear something that's more concrete. But knowing and feeling they're not concrete, but they're very real.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just trusting in what you cannot see is actually exactly how it is. And sometimes you're not going to have that proof in it all. And really, I think a lot of people are so caught up with like the gut feeling, but it's really that heart field, the heart torus field that you were talking about, the magnetics of the heart, that we're able to really, and the more that we can tune into that, um, frequency behind the words or the frequency of what you're feeling and really trusting in that, we can save ourselves a lot of time and energy and frustration if we really just honor that inner calling. And we don't always have to know why we're meant to do something or not meant to do something, or why you walk in that room and you're like, something's icky here, I gotta go. You don't have to know, you just have to trust in that. And I think the more that we lean into that, the more that we can just really anchor into that trust. Because sometimes you will know down the road why you had to leave or why you were not supposed to connect with that person in that way. But then it opens up the field for the more aligned things to come through. And I think a lot of people are so energetically sensitive. I know I am for sure, that it almost feels sometimes that to feel is such a curse in a way. I hate saying that word, but you know that feeling, it's like you're feeling too much and it's so highly sensitive that you feel like it's not actually a gift, but it really is a gift because it's your body's telling you things. And I mean, not every signal that you're picking up is worth a call or worth anything, but it's just because sometimes I'll go and I'll, for example, be in a park and I'll feel someone coming in as I'm meditating, and I just kind of go, okay, what is this? This feels weird. And then I have that immediate like safety feeling. But then I go, oh, no, it's a foreign energy. I can let that go. I don't need to like worry or fear what that person's energy is. I just, oh, I'm picking up something in the field because I'm very energetically sensitive and open right now. And oh, that's someone coming in. Different energy doesn't mean they're bad, doesn't mean it's good, but I can just feel their energy and then I can kind of tuck it away because I don't need to like answer that call, so to say.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And I think that's also very related to staying in your heart. And again, that's idea of staying in your own field, in that Taurus field that comes from your heart. And the gut feeling is, I feel like it's the first step to come to this and to this as well, and having like this coherence between the gut, the heart, and the brain. And like you can see it as the chakras, or if you're into neuroscience, the brains of the body, because they say the brain is also the gut. There are neurons in the gut and in the heart and in the brain. But having that coherence, but I do think that it's about the heart and staying centered in the heart, because then you can feel the energy. But if you're centered, then you just know how to respond or not
Mhm.
to whatever energy is coming into your field. And there's also the other part of this, which is people will, even if subconsciously, feel this energy, and they will either repel or
Mhm.
they will come to you because they can feel like the resonance, and you will feel too. So this, yeah, the heart, I feel like, is the the Pleiadians always talk about the heart, and
Yeah.
they're very big on the heart, and they always say that your heart is your multidimensional tool. And I
Mhm.
think one of the things that the heart does is that sort of, I don't want to say protection, because I think a lot of people get caught up to in the protection, like I need to protect myself. It's
Yeah.
not so much about building the protection, but going inward and staying in your heart. Like the heart is your protection. If you're connected to your heart, you're vibrating in love, you're feeding your own Taurus, your own energy field, that's enough.
I've really had to reframe the protection stuff a lot. Like, I mean, over the past couple of years, and I feel like it's a very Pleiadian teaching as well, because it's like when you are really connected in your soul essence and like letting the light be pushed out of you, that in itself is like enough of a. It's not like protection. We don't need to like protect and wall ourselves up and compact ourselves and feel the need to always protect ourselves or have all these like shields around us and everything. It's more about really staying in our heart center consciousness and letting our light kind of push out that energy, so to say, and being in our essence. That really is where all of that comes from.
Yeah, yeah, and sending love from this place too. If you're ever, I don't know, walking on the street, and for whatever reason you're feeling some kind of fear, go
Mhm.
back into your heart, and send love to whoever is around you, or to whatever you're feeling,
Yeah.
and this will dissolve the fear.
And I think that also brings in so much power and sovereignty because recently this came up with a trip I was on where we're like, oh, I would, someone was worried about an energy that of someone that they kind of felt like they were picking up on. I'm being vague for a reason. And they uh, the message was like, you're so much more powerful than that, and if we walk around thinking that we're going to get attachments or cords and all these different things all the time, which very much do exist and happen, but it's really like we have to be able to go into a grocery store. It's like being a human. We have to go into a grocery store without thinking we're just going to like sweep up something bad and then, you know what I mean? Like we have to be these light workers in these human settings. Do you know what I mean? Without thinking that we're going to like get these attachments and be in that disempowered state. So I really love that, what you just shared there, because it is so important to stay in your sovereign field. I know who you are now, but like what was your journey with your awakening, and also like connecting with the Pleiadians specifically? I don't know if they all kind of weave in as one or if there's like a
No, no, I'll give you a snapshot. Um, like
you woke up like this. You're just born this way. Yeah, no.
no, but I remember when we last spoke and you were on my podcast, we were talking about waves of awakening, and that's kind of how I see it. I see the spiritual awakening as these waves, and I always say that um, the first wave of this awakening actually happened when I was a child, and I've always been a very sensitive kid, very artistic, and I like to draw and paint and dance and sing, and I was so fine to by myself. Like my mom would literally leave me be in my bedroom for hours, and I would be fine playing with my imaginary friends.
Yeah.
And my brother was the complete opposite. He was always out. He always needed to be around people, and he had so many friends. He was the popular kid, and I was fine just with myself. And that's kind of the truth today, even. Like my brother is the one that's always going out, and I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm at home. I'm fine. I'm great.
Yeah, I love that.
But yeah, so when I was 8 years old, my dad suddenly passed away. Like he had a heart attack in the morning. Well, he was having it before, but he went to the hospital, never came back. So obviously that was a traumatic situation. It was my childhood trauma. And I've done a lot of work, healing work around that. And there are layers and layers to that, I'm still dealing with, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, but I also, even though it was, yes, very sad and painful, but I think that was the catalyst for my awakening. And maybe if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have awakened, or maybe I would still have awakened, but through something else. Because when that happened, I remembered just questioning everything,
Mhm.
like questioning like the big questions, like why are we here? What
Mhm.
happens after we die? Is there an afterlife? Can I talk to my dad? Can he hear me? Are we ever gonna meet again? And
Wow.
all I had around me was adults saying he's in heaven. And then I would look up in the sky and I'm like, but I can only see clouds. Like it
Mhm.
doesn't feel very true for me. Like I knew there was something else.
Mhm.
Um, and so and I always say that one of the first steps, if not the first step to awakening, is
Mhm.
questioning everything, like questioning why you're here, questioning your religion, questioning politics, whatever. You start questioning. And so I think because I started questioning, I energetically opened myself to receive whatever information I needed to learn, because on Earth I wasn't receiving any information. People couldn't help me because they also didn't know. And they were also treating me like a child. Like,
Yeah.
let's tell him that he's in heaven, he's a star, right?
Yeah.
And so then because I dream a lot, as you know, my dad showed up in my dreams. And it was so, so real. His presence was real, like, and that's why I got really scared and I
Mhm.
woke up because I knew my conscious self knew that he died, so he wasn't here physically. But how come his presence felt so real in the dream?
Yeah.
And so then it was like a process of um, dreaming again, and then he would show up in my dreams, but then I wouldn't be scared. And then the next time we would hug, but we wouldn't speak. And so I could feel his presence, but so it was like a gradual thing until, and that was, I can't remember. It wasn't like weeks, it was years, right? I
Yeah.
wasn't thinking about him every night, but then I think it was about 19 or 20 that I said it was gonna be a snapshot, and I'm giving you the whole novel.
No, I love it. I love it. Let's go into the archives. I want to hear it all. It's all
Uh,
important.
yeah. So I
Mhm.
was going through auditions because when I was 19, 20, I wanted to be a pop star. And I was doing this show called Pop Stars in Brazil, which is like idols and The
Yeah,
Voice.
yeah. We had
And
a
I was
Canadian version of it too.
Yeah, I was making it through. We wanted to be a part of this boy band. I'm a boy band guy, love Backstreet Boys and sing.
I okay, I would have never have guessed this or known this, so I'm just loving this right now.
Yes, and so I was making it through the auditions because there were several auditions, and then out of, I don't know, thousands of boys, I was down to like 50. And so I was like, oh my God, this is like my dream. I'm gonna make it. So I really believed that he was everything. At the end of the day, it wasn't, because when you're 20, you're just like naive and you think that, your dream is this, and you're like, this is everything in my life, and I've worked all my life for this, and you've only lived 20 years. But but then I remember I had like the audition was next day, and I had this dream where it was very clear. It was like a movie screen. He showed up, my dad showed up, just his face, and his message was very clear, very simple. And he said, no matter what happens, never give up on your dreams.
Whoa.
Vanished.
Whoa.
And then I was like, oh, okay, thank you, Dad. I'm not gonna give up. I'm gonna go tomorrow. I'm gonna do great in the audition. When I did it, I knew I didn't make it. I knew I didn't do well. I
Mhm.
just knew it. But I wanted to believe that I did it because, in Brazil we have this saying like the hope is the last thing that dies. I don't know if there's a saying in English. There might be something similar, but we hold on to hope because it's the last thing that dies. And yeah, eventually I didn't make it, but that message was so simple. And then to this day, I still remember because there were other moments in my life that I was about to give up. And then I
Mhm.
remembered it. And so all of that to say that, there were other instances where he also showed up. This time I wasn't scared. It was almost like, oh, thank God I dreamt about him, and he came in the right time to say the right thing. So it
Yeah.
was almost as if I had a relationship with him, and he wanted me to know that he was okay, he was in a good place, and he was still protecting me and guiding me, and we still have a relationship different to the one that we have that I'm having with physical people, but that still existed until there was one specific moment. I was older already, that I actually saw like a plasma light that was turning into his face and his hands. And I think it was one of the only times that I've actually seen spirit with my physical eyes, because I see it, but with my third eye.
Yeah.
And some people have this ability to see it with the physical eyes, but that was the only time. And then we had this telepathic conversation, but I didn't really know much about spirituality, to be honest. I was connected to spirituality because of him. So in a way, he was guiding me into that spiritual path too. Because
Absolutely. It's like he was the one being like following these breadcrumbs because you have these gifts that you need to use. And this is
yeah,
how you're going to serve humanity with them.
yeah, and I'm so grateful. Like I get goosebumps because he was still my dad. He
Mhm.
was still this soul that we have this connection, and we're connected still in different realms.
Hmm.
And then when I was about 30, so about 10 years ago, I moved to London for the second time and I had my big wave of spiritual awakening there. Nothing extreme happened other than me moving and leaving everything behind, but in starting a new chapter. But I started meditating daily. And then I started to feel his presence and actually connect and hear him very clearly. I started free writing and automatic writing. He
Yeah.
wrote a letter for me through me. I was doing a songwriting course degree, and so I had to write songs every week. And that became my spiritual practice because I started
Mhm.
channeling lyrics and melodies. There's actually one song that I did that was a co-creation with my dad because it was like
Yeah.
a letter from him to me saying that I'm still with you. That was the name of the song. Um,
Wow.
and it was so, this is actually a funny story too, because at that point, I hadn't had a dream about him for quite a few years. And then in 1 week, the brief was write a song. The brief was dream. So like, okay, I'm gonna write a song about dreams. And I thought of my dad, and it was something along the lines of like, when I dream, I can talk to you and I can feel you. Then I wrote the song that night. He showed up in my dreams.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. He's such a
Yeah.
guide of yours.
Yeah. But at some point, I started to really do a lot of healing and just I did a lot of breath work as well, which is what I teach today. And I could really feel him very easily. And I started to feel other presences as well. Like I remember writing a channeling free writing thing. It was Archangel Michael. So I connected with him first. And at some point, I felt like I could hear my guides, but it felt like it was a collective. It
Yeah.
didn't feel like it was my dad or Archangel Michael. And I even questioned like, is my dad still around? But it felt like he was a part of the collective.
Hmm.
And I started channeling this collective, and they gave me the name the Guardians of Love. And I was like, oh, great. This is so beautiful. We are the Guardians of Love. The first channeled messages that I ever posted on my YouTube, they're actually under the name of the Guardians of Love. But I remember my process there then channeling was, and I told you this last time, I was like, I would go into breath work, I would breathe for half an hour, then I would meditate for another half an hour, and then I would come back, write everything that came through, recorded a meditation and post it. It was like process, like to fast forward to today, I'm like, close my eyes, write, post it.
Yeah.
And it was actually them that said, look, you know that you don't have to go through all of this to channel to connect with us. And I'm like, oh, thank you.
Yeah. Good. This is getting exhausting. This spiritual
Yeah.
practice is
Like,
exhausting.
yeah, who has time to do that? Like, it's a full-time job.
I can
But
totally
it was
resonate with that.
yeah, it was a process, and I think it's important. I do really think it's very important and very valuable for anyone watching or listening to be disciplined with your spiritual practice and to really like meditate every day, to do your breathing, to do your sound healing, whatever it is that you do, because then at some point it feels very intuitive, like you embody that, that multidimensionality. So you're meditating while you're walking.
Yeah.
So if you've practiced enough, then you can get to this level. Because I think sometimes people say, I meditate when I walk, but are you really meditating?
Yeah.
Or is it just a meditative experience? I think you can get to that experience of walking,
Yeah.
meditation when you've practiced enough. Uh,
Absolutely. And it's more about getting out of the mind, getting out of the thought loops. And because I can resonate with what you're saying, everything began with meditation. That was like the gateway drug into everything. And that's when I started to receive information and connect with this really big light energy. Everything's always been light. And so um, for me, I kept looking for like where like because psychic 101, all that stuff, it's like meet your spirit guide. And I remember being like, I'm not meeting just one person. Like, this is an energy, it's a collective, it's light. And it took me a long time to figure that out. Um, but it was like this all-encompassing oneness energy, which a lot of that is like councils of light that come forward. But it is true. It's like the more that we can also just really trust in the way that we're receiving information and be diligent in those practices, because at some point it won't be as doesn't have to be as scheduled like that. But in the beginning, when you're just developing, it's so important to have that commitment. And I know for myself, I was someone who was very anxious, very ungrounded, ADHD, all of that. And a lot of that was because I was carrying so many other energies and anxious, and I had a lot of trauma that was, stuck in my body. But when I meditated and I'd connect with what, at the time I didn't have any awareness around it. But when I would feel this overarching love and presence around me, I would be addicted to meditation. So it became one of those things that I had to do every day. I still do, but it is really important to be able to sit in that stillness. And I think a lot of people do have trouble with that stillness. And it's like, no, you can move your body around. You can just shake out the energy and then come into it. And some days are going to be good. Some days aren't going to be great, but you will get to a place where you can just close your eyes, or you can, I mean, my guides want me to keep my eyes open when I channel. Actually, they feel like there's codes coming through the eyes and the voice. So it's just a different level, but we have to start from somewhere, right?
Absolutely. And I loved what you said about trusting the feeling. It's like, when I meditate, I feel this love in my heart. And even though I am describing how I connected to the Pleiadians and naming beings and my dad and stuff, I think the most important thing is to connect with the feeling and
Mhm.
the frequency. And if there's a message, with the message, more than trying to figure out who you're connecting with or where is this coming from. Is it my dad? Is it Archangel Michael? Is it from the ninth dimension?
Yeah.
It's the message that you need. And it's something that I always tell my students or clients is trust that the information will be revealed to you in the right time, in divine timing, because there's
It's so
so
true.
much information, so infinite
Yeah.
amount of information. How can you know everything, right? And it's always relevant to what you're going through in your life. Like
Mhm.
when I was doing the audition, I needed that information and it came through.
Yeah.
Now, it's a different type of information, and we do the work to also channel information for others. And it's always what they need. It's always what they're ready to receive too, what we're ready to receive, but also what they're ready to receive, right?
Yeah. I love that your dad guided you on this. He like guided you into the channeling and this experience. It's just such a beautiful story. And how he's the one that led you here is it's so cool and so incredible. And I can resonate with that because there are some past over loved ones of mine where I have a very stronger relationship with them now than I did before. And not in the way it was a bad relationship. It's just like we have such a different, it's just a different energy. It's a different connection. Um, and so it's just a beautiful thing for people to sit with. And because we still have those connections, they're always there and always available to us. We're just in a different way and different form.
And we have a team of guides helping us, and they can be your loved ones or the Pleiadians or spirit animals. And again, information will be revealed to you in the right time. At one point when I was channeling the Guardians of Love, um, they well, I came across this interview with Barbara Henclau
Mm.
by Regina Meredith on Open Minds.
Yeah, I love Regina Meredith.
She was talking about her book, The Alchemy of Nine Dimensions of Consciousness, which is a channel material. She channeled from the Pleiadians and she was talking about it. And it was a life-changing moment because my heart was racing and I was like, I need to read this book. This is information that that I'm meant to know.
Mhm.
And I remember downloading the book, starting to read the book, and then my guide said, take it easy, go slow, don't finish the book, just read one chapter, stay with it, stay with, because each chapter is one dimension of consciousness. And I did that, and I had so many synchronicities while reading the book. It was crazy. And I was also becoming familiar with the Pleiadians on a conscious level. I was getting knowledge about them. And in one of these meditation channeled sessions that I was having for myself, they came through and they said, by the way, we are the guardians of love.
You know, it's so funny because I was literally just about to ask you that. That's what I was about to ask. I was gonna be like, do you feel like the guardians of love were the Pleiadians? Because obviously they're the Pleiadians. The second you said, I was like, oh, the Pleiadians, because you weren't ready for, or you didn't have that knowledge or awareness of what they were. And that's why it's so important to follow those nudges of like the book. And maybe it's not necessarily you have to read the whole thing. You might, but you might just need to gain little pieces or things that help connect the dots and merge the information to bring it forward to your consciousness and your awareness. So it, because I've had that with a book too, where it was like because they kept saying we are one consciousness, we are you, you are us, we are infinite, we are all. um and I read it, it like I had to read this like one part in a book, and that was it, and that's all the information I needed to gain like what the knowledge of like what I was connecting with. And it's so true because at some point you will get a name or you will get more information on it, but it is coming in those when it needs to come in those exact moments. I
Yeah,
love
and
this. I love the telepathy going on here. It's like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
just
yeah.
have to ask this.
I had the same reaction. I was like, oh, it makes total sense because
Yeah.
they are, in a way, the guardians of love. 5D is all about love, unity consciousness. So they're here to be the guardians of love. And I also feel that a lot of us who resonate with their energy, we're here to be the guardians of love too on Earth, like ambassadors of that energy as well.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, from that point on, I started like working with them more consciously and channeling them. And they were also the ones that they gave me like the green flag or the green light to say like I'm working with the Pleiadians and like come out of the closet, come
Yeah.
out of
Own
the
it.
closet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, closet doesn't feel good, so I should know by now, like I'm gonna come out, And
Yeah.
so I like, okay, I channel, I talk to aliens, people, you
This
know.
is what I'm doing now.
Yeah, and so yeah, it was beautiful, and the book as well, um, is the basis of my program, the Multidimensional Self, which I take people through this 9 week journey. Every week is a dimensional consciousness, and is based on the book, but also the information, the extra information that came through from them for me based on that. So again, that is the catalyst. And I think sometimes we have books or podcasts or videos or movies even that can be a catalyst for something, and then you get the information, then you combine with it. So the way that I do this is I get the information from the book, but then I get the information from them, and then more and more, there's more information. Every time I run the course, there's like more information and I need to update it.
Yeah.
So,
And you know what's interesting is like how you were being called to read it in chunks, and how it's because it was the basis of what you're teaching in a way, and you had to digest and receive more knowledge on each level of consciousness. And what's really interesting, because I know that you had mentioned to me last week about how you were listening to something that I was channeling, and you weren't listening to that, you were listening to like other information was coming. And I was about to say, like, don't you just love when you're reading a channeled book or a piece and you're not actually reading it because you're receiving information through it? And that happens to me quite often. Like if I'm reading or um I'm not actually like necessarily listening. I mean, sometimes yes, but like a lot of times it's like there's so much information coming through at the same time. So what a life it is to be multidimensional in that way.
yeah. And for me, this book, I've read it a couple of times, and the first time that I was reading it, that they guided me into like taking it slow, I felt a lot of guidance from them, like a
Yeah.
lot of guidance and the synchronicities. I traveled to Mexico in Yucatan while I was reading the book. I went to Chichen Itza and to the Mayan ruins, and
Oh.
And then later I found out that the Mayans are very Pleiadians. They're very connected to the Pleiadians. There is a star in the Pleiades called Maya. They were pretty much a portion of the collective, the Pleiadians that lived here in on Earth. And I don't know if you remember last time, I also talked to you about the airport thing and me going to the United States.
Yes.
I was in between the fourth and the fifth dimension.
Hmm.
And eventually, like after what happened at the airport, and I felt such a presence of love, even though it was not a very pleasant, it was a horrible situation. But I was just like sending love to everybody, sending love to people, and just staying in that love. And it was almost like there was this voice just telling me, stay in love, stay in love. I had this dream again. And it was, I think, one of the few times because my connection with them is just very energetic. It's telepathic.
Yeah.
I hear it, I can feel it. Every now and then they send me visions, and every now and then I dream. But I think that was the first time that I actually saw a Pleiadian. And I think she looked kind of like you. She was like very, very serene and at the same time very loving and kind of happy with a big smile on her face. She just tapped on my shoulder and I looked around and I see her. She's smiling, she's giving me that energy of calmness. There were others behind her too. And she said to me, you thought that we forgot about you, didn't you? And I
Oh,
said, well, maybe, but we didn't. We were right there with you. And I felt their presence when I was going through that. I had goosebumps now. So because
wow.
it's very real. And that was again one of the coincidences that just gave me that not coincidences, one of the experiences that gave me that confirmation that they're actually, with me, that I'm actually working with them, that it's not just me making
You're,
things up.
yeah. I think oh, that's so beautiful because and on every path, at any point in this channeling journey, there are times you're like, am I making this up? Like, is this really happening? And but then you get like the wild confirmations after and and get to a place where, I mean, there's always moments, but get to a place where you're like, no, this is it, and I'm owning it, and this is what I am, this is what I'm doing, and I believe you, and I believe me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
and when I got the book again to read the book again, I think it was in around the fifth dimension. And I stopped just before a paragraph that was actually talking about staying in the presence of love and in your heart, even in places like an airport.
yeah.
So I didn't read that message before, I read it after.
Wow.
For confirmation too.
I talked about this recently a lot on the importance, and I feel like because of the energy of this year, why it's so important to stay in our essence, stay in our love, despite what may be going on around us, any chaos or what other people are going through. Because I know for myself, there are often like indirect unwritten rules within family or friendships or situations that if someone else isn't happy then you can't be happy or you can't be doing well in your life, like rewrite those rules essentially, and because we have to stay in that essence, because I feel like a lot of us have worked really hard to be in that love consciousness and to be in a good place, and we've gone through a lot. um, and so I think it is this really beautiful message that now that I'm realizing it's probably a very Palladian message that came through, and angelic as well, to really be in that energy and anchor in that energy. Because if everybody's going downwards and spiraling, then there's no, we're not anchoring anything into the right
Yeah.
timeline that we want to experience into this on this earth plane.
Yes, yes, yes. And I feel like this is a very Pleiadian energy and it's very much related the way that I see it with Christ consciousness.
Mhm.
And that's something that's a big theme for all of us that and we're learning what it is and what it means to be in Christ consciousness because Christ consciousness is 5D, is unity consciousness, is love. And um Yeshua or Jesus was a Pleiadian being, and so that's the Christ consciousness is not necessarily just related to that being, to that person, to that human being, but he came to earth to seed that, to remind us of that Christ consciousness, of this love, of this unity. And so even that story has been distorted as
Oh
well
yeah.
for
Yes.
a lot of years. And then that's why we're learning, first of all, that learning that Christ consciousness, that Christ is not always just related to Jesus, the Jesus from the Bible.
Yeah.
And he was just the messenger of
That's the
Christ.
misunderstanding of it all, I think, as well in this, in this world, is that he actually just embodied that Christ consciousness.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
what you're
and
saying.
showed us that we can too embody that we are here to do that. That's one of our purposes, to embody that Christ consciousness, to be love, to be the love. But I say that we're learning or remembering what it is because of these distortions and because of misconceptions. And I think one of them, and because we're coming out of the age of Pisces and entering the age of Aquarius, and the age of Pisces has this feeling of first the Messiah is going to come back, and the guru knows all the answers, and you have to sacrifice your life for others just the way that Jesus allegedly did.
Yeah.
That there's this feeling of sacrifice, and I love everyone, but I sacrifice,
Yeah.
and then we see that in family patterns, in the way that we relate to romantic partners, to children and parents. And it's very hard for us to be in that space where we are sovereign. And I think that's one of the layers of Christ consciousness that we haven't been taught. I do feel that if you are embodying Christ consciousness and you are embodying love, then you are becoming sovereign. And becoming sovereign also means you take care of your frequency and of your energy, and you stay in your heart. That doesn't mean you don't love others and you don't take care of others. You're always sending love, but you also understand that sometimes you send love from afar. That
That's
love,
the biggest thing. Yeah. And
yeah,
sometimes you have to do that. And it doesn't matter what others may perceive of you to be, but because you know the truth. And as long as you know your truth and your reasoning why, that's all that really matters. And also with when we're talking about this self-sacrifice, because that's been a huge thing for a very long time for a lot of people. And it's funny, I was saying to some friends a couple weekends ago in Sedona, I was like, guys, I don't think Jesus was a pushover. Like they make him seem like he was just this pushover, like love, be, all that. I don't think he was. I think he definitely stood his ground very much so. And so it is this, sometimes in certain situations, I'm like, Jesus, how'd you do it? How do you handle these people? you know, and I'm not like I think I have a hard time sharing publicly that I do connect with Jesus as an ascended master because of, it is coming back into that Christ consciousness, but it's also in that sense of power and not the power over, like we were just talking about, like we've experienced in that age of Pisces, right? Where it's power over, it's the guru knows best. And now all of these people who have lived in that dynamic are being knocked off their pedestals a little bit here. And it's now recognizing, and it's even in parenting too, that we all have a unique frequency that we're here to share with one another, and one isn't better than the other. We all are needed in this. And someone doesn't know more than you do. You know what I mean? I mean, we can teach others, but we all have something unique and we're all teachers for one another and we all need each other to collaborate in that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I resonate with what you said about Jesus too. And I have a feeling that he was just so aware of his energy field and the fact that he is the embodiment of love, and that in itself is a very sovereign thing, that he knew that whatever happened to him, whatever people perceive him as, or that he was okay.
Mhm.
Like maybe he was killed and he was put in a cross, maybe he did, but even in that in that horrible story that we've, you know, been told, there's an aspect of sovereignty too, because he knew that he was safe regardless, that he knew that he would be okay, right? And I think there's something to learn, a lot of things to learn from him, but also just understanding that sovereignty is not necessarily just about you staying in your power, but people don't need to know that you are in your power all the time because you know it.
Yeah, it's like you know the truth. You don't need to like prove it or make it like so external and in the face, right? It's even with knowledge. Like it's like I don't need to prove to anyone. You know, it's like I know who I am, and that level of sovereignty is so deeply important. And on that aspect, it's also this often mistaken thing within this, ascension world, spiritual world, where um, you know, we are ascending out of this body, and it's like, no, we are becoming the masters here on earth now.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And that's why we've had ascended masters so that they could show us that it's that we too can be the ascended master, that we can be sovereign and enlightened, and also understanding that the enlightenment that we've come to believe or to think that it's something else, that everybody is enlightened and everybody has the power to connect with that light within. So yeah, I love that aspect of the ascended masters as well. And since we're talking about Yeshua and ascended masters, I last week, when I was before I guided the activation that I was meant to do, I asked my guides to take me through the journey that I was meant to guide. And my guides are with me when I'm guiding too, but I just wanted to have the experience myself so that I could share. And Yeshua was so present with Mary Magdalene, and they were a couple.
Yeah.
They were always holding hands, and it didn't even feel like there were two beings. They were so like shiny, and it felt like one entity, you know.
Wow.
And then they were guiding us into that union within us, between our feminine and our masculine within us. And I have a strong feeling too that Mary Magdalene is a Pleiadian being too.
I was just I was just about to say that she's very Pleiadian, very, very Pleiadian. She's been coming through a lot for me very recently, and I love that they presented themselves that way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
beautiful.
it was so funny because there was one of the participants, well, she's my friend, and she was there. And then the next sends me an audio message, and she goes, after the breath work, I just went somewhere else. I blacked out and I don't remember what happened, but when I came back, the image of Yeshua and Mary Magdalene was so vivid for me, and I could feel their presence. But she missed the guided uh, journey.
And almost all she needed was to push the book button and be in the frequency in the portal that you are providing, the container you're providing for her to have that. And for, it's like that energy of like things are so much more powerful when we come together in a group.
Yeah.
And if I've been on someone else's guided journeys, I'll already be where they said they were going to go almost instantaneously. And then I'm like, oh, now they're here. And I'm like, I'm already here. It's just so fascinating the way that we can, if we really just surrender and trust. And often it's just about being in the energy that amplifies it all. Right?
Yeah, yeah. And it was also like a beautiful realization that she had, um, because she understood that their energy or their message was that she needed to marry herself. Because
Yes.
when she was watching the vision, she was by herself. She didn't have the partner, the future partner. She was wearing white, and she felt really loved, but
Yeah.
just by herself. And then she understood that the marriage needs to be within her so that,
Yes.
yes, she'll be in a relationship, but first nurture that unity, that union, that marriage with her.
Very interesting. There's a couple few clients often that will come about, relationship, or they'll be considering, leaving a relationship. They want to come for the very physical what to do, and yes, that can come, but a lot of times the messages are firstly about loving yourself and getting back to yourself and your self-worth and that marriage within yourself, that union within yourself before you can even consider, yes, that's going to happen. Yes, you're going to have your partner. Yes, all of that's going to happen. But first, this has to happen first. And I think that's also within any relationship, like even people who are married or have a long-term partner, it's like there are these moments within the relationship where you still have to kind of like come back in and always nurture that inner relationship with yourself so that you can love another, so that you can love your children even more. It's like we have to come back to that wholeness within ourselves and that divine union that is happening within ourselves right now first, the masculine and feminine energies within ourselves that are coming into union before we can start to really connect with others on a deeper level as well. And
And we are entering in, according to the Pleiadians, in an era where this is one of the main focuses. Like we need to start activating the feminine and the masculine within us because that's what's happening with Earth. That's what's happening with the galaxies, the Milky Way, Andromeda Galaxy. They are becoming one. They are the male and the female counterparts. And so this is part of the ascension. This is part of us reaching that 5D or that unity consciousness is becoming one, understanding that we have both energies within us, regardless of your gender, your sexual orientation, anything. It's just about the energy. And we will in the future get to this point where we're all integrated and have those two energies activated within us.
oh, absolutely. I love that so much. With your recent activation, because I'm sure there's probably a lot of people that would be interested, is this a pre-record, like is this recorded? Can people purchase it now, or is it kind of like a past thing?
No, it's on my website, and I've also put it on my shop, just the meditation and the like a meditation with binaural beats and subliminal affirmations that people can use to rewire their subconscious mind, and so they can use while they fall asleep, or if they're working, they can hear it because that can really um, reprogram our subconscious mind to know that you deserve love. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a co-creation. I think that's also another theme for
Yeah.
the age of Aquarius and the future.
So true. It really is. I just want to say thank you so much for being here. I obviously could talk to you forever. And I just feel like there's so many things that we covered here that were so beautiful and helpful for so many people. Where can people find you?
My website is willcaminada.com, and I'm very active on Instagram, the Pleiadian Channel, and I'm very active on YouTube as well. If you type my name, you'll find lots of conversation episodes, solo casts, meditations, channeled messages. Yes, and I'm very grateful for the space. This has been so fun and so high frequency. Like I'm buzzing, and whenever we
Me
connect,
too.
like the conversation just flows, and it's like we don't even see time passing by. So that's amazing.
I know, I love it so much. And I'm sure everybody listening to this will also feel the energy and frequency of this little vortex that we created in this conversation.